Welcome back to the Working Faith podcast, where we take a spiritual approach to career success. I'm your host, Jalen Isley, and today we're talking about influencing others. I am so excited to introduce Lynn Adams. So Kelly is an award-winning certified executive leadership and life and trauma-informed business coach, international speaker, educator, and creator of the Perfectly Imperfect podcast, listened to globally. She is also the founder of the Women Work Worth movement, which has helped thousands of high-achieving leaders manage their mindset, maximize their time, and monetize their business. Lynn has spent over 18 years in corporate America working for some of the top retail and fashion brands in the world and has been coaching and speaking since 2009. Lynn's transformational coaching, speaking, and success secrets are often sought out by the media. She is a contributor of Entrepreneur Magazine and has been featured on Forbes.com, Thrive Global, Huffington Post, The Good Men Project, Avon.com, and affiliates of CBS, Fox, and ABC. With that in mind, Lynn, welcome to the show. We're so glad to have you here today.
Hi, Jalen. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this show is all about leveraging the spiritual principles of our faith to positively impact the workplace and grow our careers. So I want to start off by hearing more about your faith journey. We know you identify as spiritual, but what are some of the core principles of your faith that resonate with you and have shaped who you are today?
Yeah, such a good question. So, some of the core principles, and I wasn't always spiritual. I was raised Catholic, went to Catholic school, lost my relationship with God, divine source. And so, there's been so many principles that have guided my way. And one of them I love is what is for you shall not pass you. Really, it's like what is meant for you will be there, right? So I love that one. I remind myself always about that. And then also, I love this. It's the spiritual surrender, because at times I know for myself, I can be in such control mode, right? Controlling everything, not just my controllables, but trying to control the world. And it's like, if we just take a beat and a pause for that sacred surrender, and that could look like anything. That could be getting quiet with yourself, with the divine, going outside, being in nature. That has been absolutely critical for me. And as a third one is just giving it over. Giving it over and just asking for help and guidance. So those, I think the three are really the guiding ones in this season, I think, for me. It changes, right? Because life, as we are lifing in life, it changes of whatever is going on, whether we're dealing with grief or financial issues or health issues. I think it just depends, on what works and what people go to.
I think it's so important that you specifically called out the fact that those are your guiding principles, at least for this season. And it's so important for everyone to understand that you go through seasons in life, and what you might need in one season will be completely different than what you need in another season. And sometimes you're building off of one season to the next. And so the idea that it's okay to be open to letting your spirituality evolve and letting your focus evolve as you're moving through these seasons, I think is something that's really encouraging for a lot of our listeners. So anyone who's listening, I certainly encourage you to think about the season that you're in right now. Think about your faith and the spiritual principles that have guided you along the way, and which of those core principles is what you need right now in order to excel in your career. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Talk to me a little bit about how those spiritual beliefs that you just mentioned, how have they impacted your ability to positively influence others?
Such a good question. I am in the belief of, if your cup is not full, then how can you really impact and influence others? So, and listen, there has been times where my cup has not been full and I am still of service. However, when I know I am just living those principles and being guided by them, it makes it so much easier for me to serve. Right. So, I mean, I can serve at any point. And even if I'm at the lowest of the lows, actually, that's when my service kicks in and I'm like, okay, Kelly, like it's not about you, go serve someone. And that's what I would say to other people. If you're in a low point, or maybe you're feeling anxiety, depression, it's like, go help someone else. And that usually helps for me. But the guiding principles every day, I mean, it is just a reminder to, okay, I'm a vessel for other people. So how am I going to keep my vessel centered? How am I going to fill my own cup? How am I going to remind myself of these things that I get to, learn and step into every single day? It's a practice. And for me, also personal development, every time I grow or shift or stretch or anything, that has a direct impact on the people that I serve. So
Hmm.
that is, it's just like my growth equals, the growth of others if they are willing and open, right? To
Right.
grow.
Yeah, so let me just backtrack for a moment. The spiritual principles that you mentioned were one, trusting that whatever is for you, having that sacred time, that sacred moment with the divine. So really investing in your spiritual wellness there. And then the last thing was what I heard you say was let go. So I interpreted that as release, like,
Yeah.
releasing, yeah, and asking for help and letting the universe meet you where you are and guide you to where you're trying to go. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so investing in those spiritual principles and making that a daily practice for yourself allows you to grow spiritually and then allows the effect of that growth to positively influence others. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it causes a ripple effect, right?
I
So,
see. Yeah.
and even you don't have to be in high vibration, or you don't have to be having an amazing day either,
Yeah.
because it's what you're putting out. People can feel it, right? People can feel, and sometimes people do need to relate to your messiness. Some people, that's healing, right? That gives them permission to be like, oh, she or he is not perfect. That gives me permission to be the same. So
Right.
sometimes if we are in our mess, that's our vulnerability or authenticity, that gives other people the permission to be like, oh, okay, it's okay.
Right. I think that makes so much sense. And I feel like because you are so intentional about your own self discovery and your own self growth, you can confidently be in your mess and not have to hide that. Like I feel like a lot of professionals, especially if they're public, professionals or public speakers or things of that nature, sometimes they feel the need to hide what's going on in their real lives because they've got
Yeah.
this brand or this image that they're putting out there. But I feel like someone such as yourself, when you take the time to really invest in that, especially that having that sacred time with the divine and know that
Mhm.
you're comforted and loved regardless of, what's going on in your world, you have the strength and the courage to be vulnerable, which definitely draws people in and creates that atmosphere to positively influence them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk to me a little bit about, how that showed up when you were in corporate America.
Um, I had ups and downs in corporate. I learned a
Mm,
lot in corporate. Pushed me to my edges. I landed in the hospital from burnout. I
mm,
had a lot of different things that taught me things, from being gaslighted, humiliated in front of people, passive aggressive, toxic environments, all the things. And so for me, my faith was definitely huge. I remember coming home on the bathroom floor, like, why do we always go to the bathroom floor, right? To like
right.
pray, to call 800 number and have someone pray with me, or to get on my knees on my bedside and ask for guidance. So faith has always been my go-to for whatever I was, even the highs and the lows.
Hmm.
And even just being grateful to be like, oh my gosh, this is really happening, like from a really positive perspective, and saying, yes, more of this, please. And then in some of the more challenging times, it's okay, leaning on, asking for help, surrendering, letting go, knowing that this is all happening for a reason. Now, I remember being like, why is this all happening? And not to me, but like for me. I just couldn't see it because I was in it. And now, like years later, I'm like, oh, okay, this is what's going to help me coach other people and speak and share my experiences. So it all is working out for your highest good, even if you are in the thing whatever you're experiencing right now, and you're like, why is this happening? I mean, I'm going through something right now in my love life, and I'm like, why is this happening? And
Mm,
I'm so excited to know and find out, like, what is this really doing for me? And I know it's like for my growth, and I know it's like really healing me and pushing me to learn more about myself and uncover all these different things. Yes. And I'm like, I just want to know the bigger picture. Right? Sometimes we can't see the bigger picture, but we know it's working. Like we know we're
right.
learning, we know we're experiencing things that we may have not experienced if we weren't in this situation. But I'm always excited to be like, oh, I can't wait to see like the bigger picture of it
Yeah,
all
how
coming.
this all unfolds. Yeah,
Yeah.
so let's take that a little bit more granular for people. So talk to me about a work challenge or an opportunity that called on you to influence other people. How did your spiritual principles guide your behavior in that particular instance? If you could just share like an example.
Yeah, so I remember like giving a talk in front of thousands of employees, and I had to roll out this like big initiative. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like some of these people were working in the company, 10 years more than me. And I was young at the time, and I was like, who am I? What if I can't answer their questions? What if I am not coming off confident, right? What if I'm not owning what I'm saying? What if I can't answer? So really I called upon, faith and my spirituality. And I'm like, please guide me. And I usually do this too whenever I get on stages or speak or do interviews like this. It's like, please guide me and speak through me.
Hmm.
Let me be of service to whoever is listening to this. So I really call upon and then surrender and do my thing. So it is asking and surrendering of sorts.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially if you're in a career in which you are often called upon to communicate to other team members or
Yeah.
leaders or customers, stakeholders, whatever it is, taking that time to pray before you do it and release, all expectations or limiting beliefs, and then also receive whatever it is that you need to empower yourself and let that message empower others or inspire trust or whatever the intention is. I think that makes so much sense. I don't know that I always pray before I deliver those communications. That's something that could definitely make an impact in how you show up and influence others.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I forget too when it's bigger things. And that's why I'm really getting better at this because I'm like, I really should be asking and praying every time, I'm
Yeah.
serving. But listen, we're human and sometimes it doesn't happen. I know the bigger things, right? Or the more things I'm unsure of or nervous, I lean on. And so that's another lesson for me is like, well, we can pray too when the good things are happening, when we don't need it. That's actually also more powerful too, is when we don't need the
Yeah.
prayer, can we pray? Yeah.
Yeah, like when you're not in a state of crisis or
Yeah.
big emergency or a huge career move. I really think that creates a unique atmosphere when you're constantly praying and being receptive. It creates an atmosphere to receive, what the divine has for you,
Yeah.
either consciously or subconsciously. So I think that's a really great approach to life, just like the constant prayer. That's actually something that I really appreciate about Islam because they pray at minimum 5 times a day,
Yeah.
but it builds that habit and that practice of consistent communication and connection with the divine source, which really is, the a game changer, especially as you're trying to accelerate your career.
Yeah. And it's always moving through us, right? Like the same thing that grows your hair, your nails, your
Mm.
skin, like shapes it. Like, I mean, we're aging, right? But it's all around. It's omnipresent. It's there. It's here.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree wholeheartedly. So you have shared some of the principles that guide your behavior, which is great, but I want to talk specifically about your spiritual wellness and how you maintain that because you mentioned, that growth is something that allows you to be so impactful on stage. So are there specific practices you use to maintain your spiritual health and well-being?
Yeah, I think it's very common for me. It's a, I write, I listen. I really take time for myself to get quiet. So whether that's, a minute or 10 minutes or something. So it's every day I do something where it's time away for me. And then I will say, so it could look like anything, journaling, praying, asking for guidance. I think that's important because I think a lot of people, I know for myself, we're so busy. We have so much going on. There's so much noise, social media, family, all the things. And taking that time for yourself and, divine intelligence, God, whoever you, right? That's critical. That is so critical. So that's my number one. Number two, it's more of like the health and like of my body. Like, what am I consuming on all levels? Like, what am I eating? What am I drinking? How am I taking care of myself? That's always very simple. Like, oh, we know we should drink
Yeah.
water and we know we should eat better, but it's like, how are we really doing that? Right. And can we get a little bit better each day? So that is like consumption and all. And that can also mean, what are you watching and listening to? Right.
Yeah.
Because that can sway us in certain directions. So I always really am protective of, what am I exposing myself to? Like, I don't watch the news at all anymore.
Yeah.
They're like, you don't know what's going on. I'm like, I'll find out. Right. Like, and
Right.
there's ways to find out. And I just don't. And that is just, I don't watch the news. And so there's certain things that I'm not available for anymore. And whether you call that closed off or, so it just keeps my energetics and my embodiment and all of that intact.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that, as I listen to you, there's this consistent theme of receive and release. So, you are receiving guidance, you're receiving healthy foods, you're receiving water, you're receiving all of those things to kind of fortify who you are as a person and as a divine spirit as well. And then you're releasing. So you release through prayer by asking for the next steps. You release through journaling and writing and taking those sacred moments for yourself to just kind of release everything that's inside of you. So I think that whole concept of receive and release is an interesting and also a really impactful way to make sure you're showing up as your best self as often as possible.
Yeah, and think about it. I mean, for even like a lot of women, right? Some women it's very hard to receive. I know for me, it's very hard to receive a compliment or hard to receive help or support. Yeah, and really releasing that oh, we have to do it all as women because we've come a long way as women and we can do it all. We can be superwoman, but it's like, okay, can I ask for help and really receive it? Can I, right, allow and let go? So absolutely, the release and receive is so, so critical.
Yeah. And, just something else you mentioned about your consumption. There was a time in my life where I was just making some really interesting decisions. And before I went to therapy or anything like that, I'm just like, you know what? Am I drinking enough water? And I wasn't, I wasn't drinking nearly enough water. And I'm like, all that matters. Like, your body was designed to naturally grow and heal and restore itself. And, if you're not drinking your water or getting your vitamins or things like that can significantly impact the way that your brain functions and your body functions and everything. So I think that's an important call out.
100%. Yeah. I mean, whoever's listening, or how much water did you drink today? Right. Like,
Yeah.
let's just get real. Like,
Yeah.
I know I need to drink way, like I'm behind in my water intake today, but it's those simple things that, like you said, it can affect everything. It could affect, how your mood is. It can affect all of that.
And over time, like it's not
Yeah.
if you miss your water intake for one day, we're not saying that you're making terrible decisions, but over time, if you're consistently not getting enough hydration or nutrients, yeah, that could definitely impact your ability to show up effectively. So I really am so glad that you stress that point of your well-being in terms of what you're consuming.
Yeah.
Definitely. Awesome. Great. Well, it was so great having you on the show today. I loved hearing about your spiritual principles and how they have guided you throughout your career. If there's one principle that you could share with the audience as we're gearing up for the next work week, what's the principle that we could keep in mind as we're looking to positively influence others?
Yeah, I would say this. So I kind of end interviews like this. So it's, if there is something on your heart, in your head, you feel this pull or this tug, listen to it and take action around it, because it wouldn't be there if it wasn't in your head and in your heart and in your body and your soul. So a lot of people know it. They may listen, they may not take action on it. And whether it's like, oh, I'm too old, I don't know if I could do this, how am I going to do that? Like we don't need to know all that. Like
Right.
if it's an idea, and even if a million people are doing the same thing or you want to do the same, it doesn't matter. It was uniquely guided for you. So listen and take action.
Yeah, listen to those instincts and take action. And to your point previously, like, sometimes taking action is just asking for help, you know? Like if you have an
Absolutely.
idea and you have no idea and you don't know how you're gonna make it happen, ask.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the only action you need to take at that moment is to ask. So interesting. Okay, great. Well, that sounds good. Once again, thank you so much for joining us today. How can the audience connect with you? Can they find you on LinkedIn, or what's the best way to follow up with you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And they can just head to my website at kellylynnadams.com. They can hop my newsletter. All the social media links are there. So yeah, I'm all over social media as well.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right. Well, thank you all for listening to Working Faith. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. All the show notes, information about our guest, Kelly Lynn, and a link to submit your career questions can be found on the website. So remember to subscribe, rate, and share the show with others. I'd love to hear your comments. You can engage directly with me by joining the Working Faith group on LinkedIn. And thanks again for listening. We'll be back next week with more tips on how you can take a spiritual approach to your career success and work your faith. Good day.